delighted to be here today, and I'd like to thank Liliana Sanchez and Graham Stanley for this wonderful opportunity. So thank you. I'm Daniella You. I'm the academic manager responsible for learning and development of our teachers at Cultura Inglesa São Paulo in Brazil, and I'm responsible for hiring, pre-service training and in-service training, as well as implementing teacher evaluation programs here. And today I'd like to share with all of you the study that we carried out to evaluate the impact of data-driven teacher development and evaluation program that we implemented for about a year and a half in our context. So my intention today is to share some lessons learned and also to share some good results that we had with the program. Okay, so the first thing that I think we need to talk about is our context. So what is our context where this study as well as the program were implemented? First of all, in our context, the program was initially implemented in 3 states in Brazil. As you can see in the map here, Bahia, São Paulo, Santa Catarina, and the study was conducted in those 3 states. What it's like, Cultura Inglesa is a private language institute, is a large language institute, and we operate today in 9 different states. However, for this implementation of the program as well as the studies, we carried out in those 3 states that I just showed you. We work with about 1,000 teachers, but again, for this program, we worked with about 350 teachers in about 40 branches. We also include 5 online units, as well as now, today with the integration with full operation, we are in over 94 branches. Okay, the time that we implemented the program, what we had teachers teaching online, we had teachers teaching in concurrent classrooms, and we also had teachers teaching in face-to-face settings. Something that is relevant in our context is that normally our teachers teach for about 25 hours a week, and it means that they are managing about 100 learners per semester. Teachers get support from our head teachers, and who are they? They are basically teachers who are more capable peers, and they act at times as coach, at times as mentors. They also help our managers with the academic management of the branches. And all our teachers are paid about 12 hours per semester, so they can dedicate for their PTs and in-service professional development programs. So this is our setting where the teacher evaluation and development program was implemented and the study was carried out. Something else that might help you, as I mentioned, we have our head teachers, we have teachers, their managers, and then the academic team that support our head teachers. So our head teachers are not they do have support from the academic team in order to help and support our teachers in our in-service initiatives. Okay, so what happened? How was the teacher performance assessment and teacher development were organized in the past? Before the program, what we had was unannounced lesson observation. So teachers were assessed in terms of their performance annually through an unannounced lesson observation. And the objective of these lesson observations were related to quality assurance. And how it worked, basically teachers were observed by academic supervision or supervisors. It was done unannounced, and then after the lesson observations, teachers had the opportunity to reflect about the lesson they were observed and then talk about the lesson with the academic supervisors for feedback, and then they would devise a development program based on the feedback received. So this was what we used to have until 2018. But then we had lots of issues with the way teachers were being evaluated. And if you look at the literature and what the literature says about one-off lesson observations, these are some of the comments. What we find in the studies and research is that lesson observations can be subjective. People may have different perceptions based on how the things they take into account when they're doing the observations. And also we also have what Reese mentioned, right? One-off lesson observations cannot transform teacher behavior, and guidance may not guarantee that there will be some changes or actions. And also Hockley mentioned as well that one-off lesson observation, even when agreed between the managers and the teachers, where the focus is not developmental, it may be an effective tool for it may not be an effective tool for performance management. And not only that, what we did, we wanted to hear our stakeholders, we wanted to hear our staff, our teachers and managers, and we carried out a survey about the effects of the unannounced lesson observations. And these are the findings, and this is something that we carried out in 2018. And this is what our teachers and managers overall felt about the unannounced lesson observations as a tool for performance management, as well as to assess teachers' performance. They all mentioned, managers, teachers, also the academic team who were involved in the survey, they all highlighted and pointed out that the one-off lesson observation could be subjective, it could have negative impact because of how it was carried out. First, it wasn't announced, and also it was just once a year. They all felt that it was non-developmental, it didn't help much in terms of their PD or teachers' efficacy based on this lesson observation feedback. Many felt it was demotivating and sometimes even unfair assessment. Teachers have mentioned that they have so many duties and there are things beyond the classroom that are not really taken into account. For example, how much they spend on their professional development, for instance. And they felt overall, teachers and managers, that the effect of this one-off unannounced lesson observation didn't have much clear effect in terms of institutional results. So this was the scenario. So we had the literature telling us that one-off lesson observation could not really help for professional development or even changes in teaching practice for more efficacy, as well as we had our own survey carried out to better understand the perception of our teachers and managers. Okay, so our conclusion was that one-off lesson observations could be a tool, a useful tool for measurement in terms of quality assurance, but may not have much impact in terms of teacher efficacy as well as teacher development, and may not have much impact on the institutional outcomes. Okay, so what did we do? We had to think about a solution then, because we could not continue with the unannounced lesson observation as a way to assess teachers' performance, and it wasn't helping much in terms of teacher development. So what we did was we organized a focus group involving teachers, managers, academic team, senior managers, executive directors, and we kind of got together for a year. We carried out studies and research together as a team, meeting regularly to identify what we wanted as an institution and what we believed was essential in our teacher development program, as well as in terms of teacher assessment or teacher evaluation program. And after several discussions throughout the year, we found Word docs principles, and basically it had all we wanted as a group and as an institution. What are these principles? The principles, the Murdoch's performance management principle involved reflective practice, empower teacher, promote collaboration, promote development and learners' needs. So this is what we wanted in a program for teacher evaluation and teacher development. And also, we agreed on the statement that performance management needs to be teacher supportive and concerned with teacher development. So we didn't want to have one-off lesson observation to assess teachers' performance, but we wanted to support our teachers. We wanted to have a more, let's say, fair assessment. And also, I think the main goal was, the challenge for us was how to involve teachers more effectively in their own development. But we also had some concerning issues. We were worried about some things related to reflective practice. First of all, if you go back and look at Steve Walsh and Steve Mann's articles, reflective practice may not be, it's not really operationalized systematically yet. We don't know how it really works in practice in a wider context, even though it's well accepted. There is little data-led description of its value, processes, and impact that we have to think about. And reflective practice requires collaboration and dialogue, and we weren't sure how we could implement this. Another issue or questions that we had to ask ourselves was, can teachers be really reflective practitioners in our context? And second question was, how could we operationalize reflective practice in our context and in a teacher evaluation and development program? And the final question was, what do we want to measure or assess that could be really valuable, that could have impact on our institution and on our teacher development? So these were the questions that we had, and we knew that those could be our challenges, but it didn't stop us to think about something that we could try as a solution for this. We didn't have all the answers, but we didn't want to stop because we didn't have all the answers. We tried to organize something, even though in a simpler version or initial version, so that we could make the adjustments needed, that we could build together as a team. So the program, just going back here. We wanted to try to take a few things into account to devise a program, and these are the things related to these codes here. So what we wanted to include in our program, in addition to what the Murdoch's principles, were that when teachers examine their own practices, those practices are likely to improve. So we wanted to have our teachers revisiting and investigating their own practice more often. This was one thing, and I think we wanted this somehow related to implementing reflective practice in action. Something else that we wanted to consider was teachers' learning, and related to teacher learning is that the more teachers have the opportunity to reflect upon their beliefs and practices, changes and improvement may be more likely to be effective in the long term. So we took that quote into account. So we wanted our teachers to have more opportunities to think about their own beliefs, practices, to make sure changes can happen in a more meaningful way in their context. And also, we wanted to focus on the benefits of the lesson observations, because one of lesson observation for teacher assessment can be one thing, but lesson observations can be very beneficial if they promote teacher self-efficacy. So there is this potential of using lesson observation as tool for teacher development and teacher professional learning. So we took all this into account. And after reading lots of studies, case studies, we came up with this framework, again, based on those questions that we had, Murdoch's principles, and the things that we wanted to try in our context. So we came up with this framework that it is a teacher evaluation and development program based on those 4 key stages. Yeah, so the first stage, or the first thing that happens in this program, is goal setting. So before anything else, teachers need to think of the goals they set for the semester and how these goals are set. Okay, I'm going to give details of each stage, but just to summarize, this is the framework. So teachers start from setting goals, and then from the goals they set, they will plan an action, and they will plan this action, they will implement, and they are going to add or they include PD activities while they're implementing this. And then third stage is they're going to evaluate and reflect upon what they've done. And then finally, the fourth stage involves performance review. So this is the framework that we designed. And now going to one by one. Okay, starting from setting goals, how it works. First of all, it's all based on evidence. Before deciding on what goals I set, teachers need to think about the evidence they have to decide for those specific goals and how they collect this evidence. This could be from lesson observations they carried out in the previous semester. If not, if it's a new teacher joining us, they can spend the first couple of weeks mapping out to identify their needs. And this could be done through lesson observations, not necessarily by a manager or supervisor, but this could be done as a self-lesson observation. It could be peer lesson observation, could be done by one of the head teachers who is their more capable peer. It could be done using blind lesson observations. Do they take only lesson observations into account? Not necessarily. They could also use learners' feedback, because we carry out a survey with our learners to better understand their perception of their experience. So they could rely on the reports that we have. Then we have the voice of our learners. Teachers can use the feedback they received from their managers, which is documented. They could use feedback from their peers from previous semester or during the beginning of the semester, involving a peer as their buddy, so they could discuss and think about perhaps the learners or the groups or the issues they have in common. And they could also use institutional reports from our learners, from the managers, to pinpoint or to identify the key areas in need of improvement, or areas they need to keep on improving, or the areas they would like to invest during the semester. Also, they could use learners' production as a basis for evidence for what they are going to implement as a plan of action for the semester. So this is a goal setting moment, and this is for one semester. So how long it is, how long I'm referring to? This is about 16 weeks. So in the beginning of the semester, teachers have about 4 weeks to think about the goals they would like to set for these 16 weeks, which is the semester. they have to think about what evidence they have in order to set these goals. And are the goals very open? Not really, because we're talking about over 300, 400 teachers. And in order to help and to make the operation in a way feasible, we helped our teachers with the objectives as well, in a much macro kind of way, which means we kind of suggest 4 key areas they could focus on in order to set objectives. And these areas here, where do they come from? They come from the reports that we get from our learners, from managers, and also the impact those areas have in terms of our institutional results, such as retention and satisfaction of our students. So the key areas are managing learning, learner engagement, and learning language issues or language knowledge and effective use of language in class by teachers and students, and assessment. So these were the 4 areas they consider essential that could help our teachers in terms of setting objectives for the term. Okay, so once the teacher studied and mapped out the needs they would need to work on during the term, they set the goals for the term, and then they start devising their plan of action. Now, how do they do it? They can opt, there are 2 options. They can opt for a series of lesson observations they would like to carry out during the semester, or they could opt for more investigation. They could opt for educational research. And based on that, they can build a portfolio. So even the evidence they gather to set the objectives for the semester, this can already be part of their portfolio. And then based on the evidence and the goals they set, they can decide whether they'll be focusing on lesson observation initiatives or whether they'll be focusing on educational research. Here, what I mean by lesson observations, teachers can opt from this variety. Here, this is an example given by Dr. Laura Becker. There are different ways of doing and conducting and carrying out lesson observations. And we also allow our teachers to choose what they want or what they prefer in order to focus on achieving those goals they set. They could go for peer lesson observations, they could go for self-lesson observations, they could go for a lesson observation inviting their managers to observe a specific aspect of a lesson that could help them devise a plan or devise some actions or activities they could help to achieve the goals they set. Those opting for educational research, we encourage them to think about action research they could carry out during the semester by identifying needs, planning, experimenting, evaluating, and then trying to come up with other solutions or to go back to what worked and what didn't, and then giving this opportunity for our teachers to investigate their practice. Okay, during the process of lesson observations or educational research, what do teachers do? Well, they talk about their experience through different initiatives, and this can be done, and this is normally offered as our PD initiatives or solutions. So during the process in stage 2, when they're implementing their plan of actions or actions to achieve their objectives, they can opt for either self-paced packs. It means they're going to use our Google Classroom where they can access different topics that can help them with what they're carrying out, whether they are doing lesson observations, getting feedback and talking to their peers, but they may need some sort of input, and they can do that by getting self-paced packs. Or they could have more peers involved through peer lesson observations initiatives that we promote. or they can join our local communities of practice. Because what we believe is that we believe the impact that work-based learning has in our teachers and teacher improvement. And in this, why forums, why local communities, why peerless observations? Again, in order to help our teachers to become more effective reflective practitioners, it means that more perhaps opportunities for collaboration and dialogue is essential. So this is why we organize during the process to support our teachers in their lesson observations or educational research. They have opportunities to share their experience with peers, and they can also invite peers to observe each other. So we have this open door policy or peer observation initiatives where they can offer or volunteer themselves to be observed, but also they can volunteer themselves to be the observer to help their peers. So this is one of the initiatives they can opt for. They can also, as I mentioned, go for self-paced packs, where they can have more input on a specific content or a specific area that can help them. And it doesn't mean they cannot have peer lesson observations together with some PD drop moments or self-paced pack activities. And they can also join our specific training initiatives as well. Again, always bear in mind the objectives they set and what they are devising in terms of a plan of action. And again, as I mentioned, the local communities of practice, teachers have something that we call Teachers Lab, where they can meet as a team locally to discuss how things are going, the areas they selected to work on, either through lesson observations or through educational research. But they have these opportunities for opportunity to have a forum where they can discuss issues, or they can have a session, a collaborative session, face-to-face or online, where they are sharing their concerns or findings or things they can do together as a team. This is another example. And those teachers who'd like to join these labs or teachers lab or local communities, due to timetable clashes, they may not be able to do it. They can always access the recordings of the discussions, and they can also add comments in the Google Classroom. Even the self-paced, let me go back here, even the self-paced activities, there is an area for written forum where they can make comments, they can suggest things, they can write about what they got from the pack or from the topic they visited. So, and during this process, what do we do? What do teachers do? During the process of implementing something, they have plenty of opportunity to reflect during this stage. And this reflection, as I mentioned, it could be as a group, as you could see here, it could be a group discussion, or it could be something more individual, or it could be on like a one-to-one. So a teacher might want to share his or her findings with a specific peer, or teachers may choose to have a discussion with a head teacher who is more capable peer, or they will have a chat with their manager. It's their option. They can opt, they can choose how they want to do it. But the important thing is we try to guide our teachers a little bit in terms of questions they could answer while having these discussions in groups or individually or with a peer in pairs. And then this is all in stage 2. And then in stage 3, what happens? We have a more final guided reflection about the entire process, where teachers can reflect upon the journey they they chose. They can think about the outcomes of the process during the term. So we are talking about the stage 3 normally would happen near the end of the term. So teachers would have evidence in terms of how they felt about the experience, what they can go back to the notes or whatever they recorded, because reflection here can be done orally or in written form, because even the reflection they have by talking to their peers, it could be recorded in oral form as well. So basically this final guided reflection includes self-assessment. So there isn't a moment during the final stage where teachers have the opportunity to self-evaluate and self-assess the entire journey and also the learning, as well as they have the opportunity to have a discussion with their head teacher or with the manager, or they can have a group discussion about the journey, about the findings, about the issues they found relevant during the process. And we also suggest some guiding questions to help them organize this final reflection. And then the final stage of the framework is the performance review, which is normally done with the branch manager or the teachers managers. And this is what involves evaluating the choices they made in the beginning of the term, evaluating the learning outcomes, evaluating the results. And there is, of course, appraisal meeting with the manager and opportunity for the teachers to discuss what's coming next, what could be the next goals for the next term. So in summary, this is basically what the framework is about. So setting goals based on evidence, devising a plan of action or academic action that could be lesson observations or educational research. And during the process, it involves teachers choosing some PD initiatives that are offered by the institution. And it is all about reflection during the process. And then in the stage 3, it's about evaluation, and final stage, which is the submission of this portfolio together with self-assessment and appraisal meeting. In order to help our teachers with their journey, this is something that we share with them to remind them each stage and also what are the priorities for each moment of the semester. Okay, and this is what we implemented 1 year and a half. I think it's been 1.5 years. And just by the end of the first semester that we implemented, after we implemented, we carried out a survey, a qualitative survey, to find out our teachers and managers' perceptions in terms of this new framework that replaced the unannounced lesson observations. So it involved interviews, journal log, as well as a structured questionnaire. So we wanted to better understand our staff's perception of this new framework, the impact that it had in terms of development, in terms of assessment, in terms of how much they felt encouraged for professional development, and the impact and how useful the whole framework was for development and performance improvement. Okay, this is some of the findings. Okay, so all managers that were involved in the survey, they all mentioned they felt an increase in terms of autonomy and accountability from our teachers. They felt that teachers were much more in control of their own development and learning, and they all felt that the new framework was very, very useful. And teachers, similarly, they also mentioned that the new framework fostered autonomy, more reflection, and somehow helped them improve performance. And they took more the learner's experience into account, and they felt that the new framework was much more collaborative and the assessment was a bit more fair. So overall, teachers and managers felt the new framework was very useful for teacher evaluation and teacher development. And if I could share a few quotes here that mention how much teachers felt that the new framework helped them focus on their development, more opportunities for reflective practice, and also they felt more aware, that they were much more aware of the learners' needs. So learners' needs were better taken into account when thinking about their own professional development, and they felt that the new framework could contribute more effectively to have better institutional results. And also they mentioned they felt more accountable for their own learning. They only saw benefits in terms of collaboration and the local communities of practice that were being built, and they felt they were more empowered as well as teachers. They also mentioned that the new framework could have more positive impact on the institutional results, and they also felt that their performance could be improved with the new framework. So in summary, these were the benefits they felt, they perceived after one semester of implementation. So development, reflective practice, collaborative work, they felt more empowered, they feel more accountable, and more autonomy was fostered, and they had freedom to investigate and focus. And they felt the assessment was much more fair. If you think about this is pretty much what we had in mind with the Murdoch's principles. But it doesn't mean that we only had benefits. There were also areas that were mentioned by teachers and managers that we need to consider and to make adjustments to make sure that this framework can be more successful. And the areas that we have to consider is, first of all, better understanding of roles and responsibilities. Here, what is the manager's role, what is the teacher's role, and what is the head teacher's role in terms of helping teachers, first of all, setting their goals, what kind of evidence they should select, and what kind of path or journey for professional development they could opt, and who could help in this decision making. And also they felt need of support, especially those carrying out educational research. They needed to better understand what exactly it entails. They also wanted and needed more guidance in terms of how they could improve their performance based on the lesson observations they were carrying out, the reflection they were having, as well as the action research they carried out. They felt sometimes the communication was not that clear, so they highlighted perhaps communication, how the whole framework works, and each person's role, and also how things could be better tied together, could be improved. They also mentioned that apparently it felt as if workload increased. Many mentioned that it was a concern because even though teachers get paid 12 hours per semester to put all this, to have this moment of implementing this, somehow it felt it was part of their work rather than focusing on their development. And then the last thing they mentioned was some were still resistant because the new framework wasn't that clear to many teachers and managers. But we could, as an institution, we could already see some quick wins and some good results based on this first semester of implementation. By the end of the first semester, we had an initiative. We have an internal conference, which is the colloquium, Cultura Inglesa colloquium. And for our surprise, we had, for the first time, I don't think it's going to show let me see. Okay, for the first time, we had more than 75 papers being submitted. Before that, we had about 30, 40 papers being submitted. But then with the implementation of the new framework, more teachers had the opportunity to submit papers and share their investigation. And for this year, this is about what teachers did last year by what they want to do and contribute for next year's colloquium, which is not next year, but this year's colloquium from last year to this year. We had more than 130 papers being submitted, and we have about 100 papers approved. So if you think about the impact in terms of teachers investigating their practice, but also teachers being able to share their investigation and their classroom research, I think this is amazing. Having over 100 papers being submitted, even though it's an internal conference, I think we are being able to encourage all our teachers somehow be more involved in researching and being more involved in investigating their own practice. And what do we do with all these papers? Do we provide any sort of reward? Yes, we do have something called Selenia Awards, and teachers, those top papers are rewarded with full sponsorship to participate and join international conferences such as IATEFL, TESOL, LAPSI, etc. And also we have organized opportunities for our teachers to write articles and submit their work so that we can publish a book or a selection of articles. This is something that we started not last year, but the year before. And the idea is that we can have our second edition, we can have more papers being written by our own teachers. And also, if the teachers have good results, good institutional results in terms of retention, satisfaction of our learners, innovative research or papers, they can also have this annual reward that we give to all our teachers with extraordinary performance, which is a special immersion courses that we offer in the UK for 2 weeks, and we have a tailor-made course for our teachers being delivered in the UK with partnership with International House London. And the idea is that we can have this last year we implemented this framework in all our other states, not in a full way involving education research. We focus much more on lesson observations, but the idea for 2023 is that we can also move forward and we could include more educational research as an option for our teachers in other states as well, so they can have more opportunities again to think about papers, think about sharing their practices, as well as organizing local communities. Local communities of practice have already been implemented in all states that I'm showing here on the map. If you think about numbers, here we are talking about over 100 local communities of practice that we are promoting, as well as over 900 teachers investigating their practice to improve their efficacy in the classroom. So the program, in summary, it promoted a more tailored, focused PD, professional development initiatives, as well as it was much more data driven, and it promoted a lot of reflection. You might be asking, but reflective practice or reflection can be quite challenging and not many teachers might be able to do it. And my answer to that is, I don't think we should shouldn't or we should avoid doing something because we believe that it's not going to be perfect or ideal. But I think teachers can also learn how to become reflective practitioners by the opportunities that we give to our teachers. And I'm sure that perhaps in 2, 3, 4 years, our team of teachers might be much better reflective practitioners because of the experience they're being able to have during this process, because of this opportunity that we provided through the framework that we implemented. So my key points of my talk is, I think I can summarize in these 3 main areas. Number 1, I think lesson observations can be a very powerful tool to collect data and evidence in terms of what happens and in terms of our practice, not necessarily connected to assessment. So depending on how we organize our lesson observations, it can be a useful and powerful tool to focus on teacher development. And also, I also believe that having the evidence-based professional development can help our professional development to be more tailor-made and more goal-oriented and much more focused to help our teachers per semester or per academic year. Sometimes I feel there are so many options and teachers may benefit from having something a little bit more goal-oriented and data-driven. And finally, as I mentioned, reflective practice could be tried out despite the challenges, even though sometimes not all teachers might be able to be successful at first, but I think we can always give a first step. And to end my presentation, I would like to quote Andy Hockley. He mentions that sometimes changes are not easy, right? Changes can bring discomfort, but I would like to think that people resist change for many reasons. But I think the key thing to be aware of that, in the vast majority of the cases, this resistance is not about blocking or being deliberately obstructive. It's a kind of cry for help. People who resist are usually letting you know they need some sort of help or support. So I think what we can do is not to be afraid of innovation or not to be afraid to implement something, but I think we need to consider what kind of support we can give and have to make sure that we embrace changes in a successful way. And something that I think we have to remember is when we're transitioning from a more traditional way of assessing or working with professional development to something different, we need to consider that it involves training, it involves support, it involves communication, adjustments in the process, and we may face challenges, but I think this is part of it. And this is why I think it's very important to have the changes being implemented in a very collaborative and supportive way. And I think that's it. And this is I'm sharing here my bibliography that you can have access to, and this is my contact. So I hope the session was useful. So thank you everyone.